my name's Lyda Martin, and I'm a captain of the cross country and track and field teams here at Smith. And I'm a senior, and I'm really excited to get to interview Deena Casiero. She is the Chief Medical Officer of the NCAA. So how's your day going so far?
Oh, it's been wonderful.
Yeah.
It really has, Lyda. Thanks so much for having me. Really excited to be here at Smith, and had some great conversations this morning with folks on your campus, and really just sort of getting to know the people here at Smith College that support the student athletes, and looking for ways to sort of learn and also talk a little bit about what we do at the NCAA from a health and safety perspective that can help Smith College continue to support their student athletes on campus.
All right. So correct me if I'm wrong. You were hired in 2024
Yes.
as Chief Medical Officer. Big deal. So could you tell me a little bit about how you got to this place? I know you
Sure.
worked at UConn beforehand. What was that position like? How did it
Sure.
prepare you for what you're doing now?
Yeah, great questions. So yeah, I've been a little bit over a year in this role now. I was hired in August of 2024. And I started my career off as an athletic trainer, actually. I went to a Division III school, Springfield College.
Represent.
Yes, really proud to be a product of Division III. I have a great deal of respect for Division III and its model. So yeah, I started my career off as an athletic trainer, then quickly decided I think I wanted to go to med school. I thought sports medicine was sort of where I felt like I fit. And so I did a fellowship in primary care sports medicine, actually at the University of Connecticut. So I'm an internist, general medical doctor, with a fellowship in sports medicine. So some people call this non-operative sports medicine or primary care sports medicine. That's sort of the name of my field. And for 15 years, I worked as a team doctor. And I started off at schools in and around Long Island where my family was living at the time, and then subsequently went back to the University of Connecticut to be their head team physician, their first female head team physician, and did that for 9 years.
Wow.
And then it was probably right after COVID that I started to get a little bit more involved in like the healthcare policy and administration aspect of my job, in addition to continuing to provide care for student athletes. That's when I joined the Committee on Competitive Safeguards and Medical Aspect of Sport, which is the Health and Safety Committee at the NCAA. So this is the committee that's made up of the membership across all three divisions. And these are the folks that drive the initiatives and the conversations around health and safety. I joined that committee, and that's when I sort of got to peek behind the curtain a little bit about how the NCAA works in the health and safety space. And I thought, like, this might be an interesting next step for me. Their chief medical officer retired.
Yeah.
And I was the one who filled his place. So I am the first female chief medical officer of the NCAA. And that sort of brings me to my work here. So I think that my time at UConn has really helped with this job because I was boots on the ground.
Yeah,
I was
exactly.
a team doctor working with team athletic trainers. I understand some of the complexities and some of the obstacles that kind of pop up when it pertains to caring for student athletes. So I feel like now that I'm in this national role advocating for student athlete health and safety, I can talk to team doctors and talk to administrators and athletic trainers and have that perspective of having sort of been there, done that kind of thing.
That's amazing. And I mean, congrats. I think at Smith, we really, really appreciate women's leadership. So it's really cool to be able to get to talk to someone who is sort of paving the way for other women leaders in sports. I want to ask you, as you take on this big role in the NCAA, what would you say are the NCAA's priorities in terms of health, safety, performance? What would you say about all those?
So sure, we have sort of overarching health and safety and performance priorities. One of them is physical and mental health. And we really think it's important that the word mental health is actually written into our strategic priorities. Another area is sport-related injury and illness, right? So any injuries or illnesses pertaining to playing sport, that sort of overarching umbrella is another priority. And then we have one on education and policy, because part of what I do in my department is we support member schools so that they can provide care for student athletes. And we do that through identifying or creating educational resources to help schools to kind of take that turnaround and go back to their campuses and provide care. And then we have a strategic priority around training and performance, because obviously when we think about athletes, we think about them training and we think about them performing. And then all of our programming sort of falls underneath those buckets. So when we think about things like cardiac care or mental health best practices or our concussion management plans, they sort of fall under one or more of those umbrellas. So that's sort of our priorities from a zoomed out view.
Wow. Yeah, you got a lot on the table. I want to ask you again, what recent legislative changes have actually advanced the ability for schools under the NCAA's jurisdiction to ensure these sort of health, safety, and performance aspects for their student athletes?
I think it really all starts with the Constitution. So the NCAA Constitution mentions that campuses need to provide mental and physical support for their student athletes. And so the words are written right into the Constitution, right? Okay. And that is part of legislation, and that is part of what member schools need to comply with. So that, I think, is probably one of the bigger areas. The other area that's written into our legislation is that we need to provide consensus-based guidance and consensus-based best practice documents for our schools to take and turn around and provide great care to their student athletes. So we take a lot of pride in the processes in which we create that guidance. I've talked a bit about the Health and Safety Committee, which is sort of the heart and soul of what we do in my department. But supporting that committee are what we call advisory groups. And these are groups that are made up of subject matter experts from the scientific and the medical community that come up with these consensus-based guidance. So it's important to remember it isn't me, the chief medical officer, sitting in a room writing these best practices. This is us leaning on scientific and medical subject matter experts that come up with these guidance documents. And then we disseminate those to our member schools so that they can turn around and provide that care to our athletes. And then I think another legislative piece that I think is really important is the legislation around independent medical care. And what that means is that medical people should be the ones making medical decisions on campuses. And it's really, really important. It sounds so common sense and so easy to understand, but it is really, really important that this is written into the legislation, that let the experts be the ones that make the decisions for student athletes around health and safety. And so that, I think, is another really important legislative piece that sort of puts an exclamation point on the importance of making sure that student athlete health and safety is sort of paramount.
Yeah. I can imagine it must be really, really scary for athletes when it's not these sort of people that really have the scientific knowledge making the decisions. I think that I'm really glad that that is part of the legislature.
Yeah, and it's tricky, it's complicated, because I think when non-medical folks are making suggestions, they're not doing it with any bad intention in mind, right?
Exactly.
It's wrapped up in passion and wrapped up in caring and wrapped up in all of these really well-intentioned emotions. But through all of that, it's just important to remember that the athletic trainers and the team doctors are really the ones that should be making the decisions about, can this athlete go back to play? How are we going to return this athlete back from a concussion or a broken bone? So the fact that we have that legislated, I think, is really important to point out.
That's really cool to hear about. What would you say are the trends or emerging topics that are kind of shaping your work in health and safety and collegiate athletics? What are the sort of upcoming challenges that you're coming in contact with?
Yeah, there's always new stuff that's coming down the pipeline that we're focusing on. I think some of the areas we're currently focusing on is work around performance technologies. So these are like the straps and the bands that everyone's wearing, right? The Oura rings and the Apple watches and Whoop bands. And I think that athletes and schools, sort of kind of a little bit get wrapped up in, the new technologies. But we really wanted to take some time to look into how to help schools develop actual policies and procedures around the use of these technologies. Because while they can be really fun to use and really interesting to look at, there's also other things that we need to be mindful about. Like should we be monitoring athletes while they're sleeping or while they're not doing things that directly pertains to their sport? Or where does the information that we collect from these straps and these bands, where's that information stored? And who has access to that information? And what are we using that information for? What decisions are we making based on that information? And so we held a summit back in May, and we're in the process of coming up with guidance for member schools about how to create policies and procedures around performance technology, how to implement it, and then also talking about the importance of making sure that you're constantly evaluating those policies and procedures, because this tech is changing quickly.
Yeah.
So that's one area. Another area that we're tracking on quite closely is around sports betting.
Okay.
And and we know from the data that Division III athletes actually have a higher percentage of folks that engage in sports betting.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, than Division I and Division II. And so one of the things that the Health and Safety Committee has been talking a lot about is really looking at ways to use harm reduction strategies to build supportive systems around athletes that might be developing a gambling disorder. So less focused on the athlete who bets $20 in a Super Bowl pool every year, and more interested in how are member schools identifying student athletes that maybe started off betting $20 on DraftKings once a month, and now they're betting $200 a day on DraftKings. And how is this negatively impacting that student athlete's life experience, and what can member schools do to figure out how to identify those student athletes and then make sure that we're getting them the support and the treatment that they need if they are developing a gambling disorder. So I think those are probably two emerging topics. Another one would be around women's health. That's an area that I have some passion around. I did a lot of work in women's health spaces when I was a team physician. And so we're looking at some programming and education around body image.
Yeah.
You know, when we ask student athletes, what do you want folks on your campus to be talking more about? 50% of the female athletes that answer that survey say body image. And so that's definitely an area of future focus for us as well.
Yeah, I think as a track athlete, I think female athletes are much more likely to experience disordered eating in my sport, and it's really, really cool to hear that from someone higher up in the NCAA that there are things moving us towards addressing those problems.
So important and so not talked about enough.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we want to throw some energy in the way of some of these issues.
That's amazing. Sort of as a follow-up question, specifically for D3, and I know you mentioned D3 sports betting addictions, but how do you think that these new developments, maybe in sort of these Whoop bands or this new technology, is being experienced specifically in D3 programs?
Yeah, so we did in our summit, we had student athlete advisory committee reps from each division come and talk to us about what their collective experience had been. And they had reached out to some of their other SAC reps within their division. And for sure, the performance technology piece seemed to be affecting Division III schools a little bit less than Division I and Division II schools. That might be a resource question, right? That I think there's a lot of reasons for that. And so we do see it less affecting D3 than the other two. But we do know that athletes, are even on their own, are utilizing some of these technologies, even if they aren't being given to them by their teams. They have Oura rings that they've purchased on their own, or they wear an Apple Watch and they monitor their heart rate variability on their own. So we believe that this work will still benefit student athletes in Division III, even though they seem to be using performance tech a bit less than the folks in Division I and Division II.
Awesome, that's really cool and interesting. I love hearing about all of the sort of differences between the divisions and how things sort of affect the different, the different programs.
Yeah, and resource levels. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, specifically since we've been talking about mental health, how do you think that collegiate programs can better prepare coaches and just staff in general to address mental health concerns, and then, first of all, to recognize them, and then how can they be prepared to address them in their athletes?
Yeah, I think it's so important that we're talking about this. You know, I think that when we really started talking about mental health a little bit more openly and freely throughout my career before I stepped into this role, we would always tell coaches, like, don't worry about managing the mental health of your student athletes. You're not a mental health professional. We've got folks that do that. And we would just say, just send them to the mental health professional and they'll take care of it. And for the most part, that's still true, right? We want the licensed mental health professionals to be the ones to provide that care. But I think we're recognizing now more that coaches are often the first people to see this in their student athletes, and that there probably is a lot of value in educating and training coaches at least on how to recognize the early signs of mental health symptoms in their student athletes, how to have those beginning conversations with the student athletes about like, okay, what comes next, right? And how to help them be more informed about where to refer those student athletes. So Mental Health First Aid is a program that Division III, as a division, has set aside some funding so that each Division III school can send 30 of their coaches or athletic trainers for specific mental health training and certification. And Smith College has taken Division III up on that offer, and that programming is going to be happening for your school here in the spring. Wow. So I think it's a perfect example of a school saying, we value the importance of our coaches being trained in this area. We are going to set aside some time for our coaches to go and get that training. So that's pretty exciting. And I give Division III and Smith a lot of credit for kind of taking the lead on this.
That's amazing. That's good to hear. I think that as a campus, we pay a lot of attention and care a lot about mental well-being. I wanted to ask you just personally, like, what are your sort of, as a physician, but also just as a person in a high-stress job, what are your wellness tips? What are the things that you do to take care of your mental health?
I love that. I love that question. I spend a lot of time making sure that I'm protecting my own mental health in this high-powered, very busy job, because I appreciate that one cannot pour from an empty cup. And so if I string myself out and get to the point where I can't, get up every day and be my best self, I'm not going to be as effective in my role. So one of the things that I do is I schedule my workouts into my calendar, just like I do actual meetings. And I treat those workouts like meetings with my boss, meaning I would never no-show on that meeting. I would never cancel that meeting at the last minute or reschedule that meeting at the last minute. And I wouldn't ever book anything else on top of a meeting with my boss. And I treat my workout meetings the same way. This protects time in my schedule so I can get my workouts in, and I know that that's going to help me be a better person at the end of the day. I also pay a lot of attention to the energy that other people bring into my life, and I give myself permission if somebody's energy is not serving me, that I can sort of reassign where that person belongs in my life based on the energy that I'm getting from them. And then thirdly, I prioritize sleep. I am a sleeper. I, as a physician, understand the benefits of making sure I get good sleep. So I have some strict boundaries around sleep, some pretty strict sleep hygiene routines that I stick to, and all of those things together, I think, keep me in a good space mentally.
I really love the metaphor of treating your workouts like a meeting with your boss or something like that, because I think it gives a lot of respect to yourself. Like, it treats yourself with the same kindness, and also like showing up for yourself in the same way you would show up for someone else.
Right, we don't do that enough, right?
Yeah.
You would never cancel a meeting with your boss at the last second, and so you should never cancel your workouts because something else more important came up. Nothing's more important than taking care of yourself.
I completely agree. Yeah. So you mentioned workouts, and I know you did some club sports at Springfield. What would you say is your favorite way to work out, or your favorite sport?
Yeah, so my favorite sport, I don't play organized sports anymore. I've had many ACL reconstructions, and I'm having some, older people complications that you get from those types of injuries when you're young. So currently my favorite thing to do, I just started playing golf.
Okay.
Yep, so I just started playing golf a couple of months ago, so I'm still very new. But this is like the first time I've participated in a sport in a really, really long time. It's easy on my knees, and so that's definitely my new favorite sport. I just bought my first set of golf clubs.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about that. And I love lifting weights. So lifting weights is definitely my favorite type of workout. I'm a big strength training person, and especially as I get older, I recognize the importance of keeping muscle on my body. And I think tapping into me being an athlete my whole life, that just feels right for my body, is to have as much muscle on it as I can.
That makes total sense. I think often in distance running, lifting weights has traditionally sort of been put on the back burner, but it's so important for increasing your bone density, keeping your muscles strong,
That's right.
being able to function as well as you can.
That's right. And the older you get, the more important that gets. You lose muscle very quickly. I want to be able to get a gallon of milk out of the fridge when I'm 85 years old.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so yeah.
It's ultimately super practical.
It is. It is.
So, do you have a favorite golfer or a favorite athlete in general that you really look up to?
Oh, geez, that's a great question. I've got a lot of favorite athletes. I've been very blessed in my life to take care of athletes in college that I then get to watch be really successful at the next level. And so probably one of my favorite athletes that I was involved with, and now I get to sort of watch her blossom and shine, is Paige Beckers from the University of Connecticut women's basketball team. Watching this young woman handle her fame, the pressure of being a UConn women's basketball player that was supposed to be a franchise player when she came in as a freshman, to watch her battle injury after injury, fight back from those injuries to become the franchise player that everybody thought she would be, and to be humble through every single moment of all of it. She was always somebody who gave the praise to her teammates and her coaches rather than allowing the spotlight to stay on her. And to watch her now be successful in the WNBA as the first overall pick to the Dallas Wings last year was just a really exciting and wonderful moment. So I think that Paige Beckers is somebody that young women can really look up to, because not just as a basketball player, but as a human and as a woman, she's just spectacular.
Yeah, yeah. I know Paige Beckers has a lot of fans here at Smith College.
Oh, good.
And I think
it's hard not to be a fan of her. I mean, I don't know what you can't love about her. She's just spectacular.
Yeah. And I think also our athletic administration puts a lot of effort into supporting us, not only as athletes, but as helping us grow into the best humans we can be.
Absolutely.
I feel like, specifically from my coaches, like, that is his top priority, is to help me become a better person through my athletic journey.
That's absolutely right. And I think there are so many opportunities as athletes to learn those messages and those life skills. That reminds me of a quote that's inside the men's ice hockey locker room at the University of Connecticut. And their head coach, Mike Cavanaugh, was one of my favorite coaches to work with. But there's this humongous sign inside the locker room that says, "Treat the janitor like you would treat the CEO."
Yeah.
And that was the quote that he chose to put inside the locker room, right? Like, of all the quotes that you could have put up about winning and, right, like all the, he puts up that quote. And I just think that that is a perfect example of how athletics, being part of athletics, can teach you lessons about life that go way beyond playing your sport.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So coming back to your role in the NCAA, what do you think, since starting it in August of last year, has surprised you most about what you've been doing, or what you've been able to achieve, or what you've seen other members of the NCAA achieve?
I think my biggest surprise was how amazing the people inside of the building of the national office truly are. I think that a lot of times the NCAA gets a terrible rap. When you read things in the paper or you listen to sort of the news, it tends to paint the NCAA in a negative light. And the biggest surprise to me when I interviewed for this job and I got to meet the folks that are sitting around the leadership table, like Charlie Baker and the rest of the folks on his leadership team, was that these people care so deeply about student athletes in every facet, the health and safety space, in the eligibility space, in the academic space. It is blood, sweat, and tears that go into this. So that's been, I think, my biggest surprise. And honestly, the thing that fuels me every day. I wouldn't be fighting this fight if I didn't believe in the mission of the NCAA and what it's trying to do. And the longer I spend here, the more I realize that the people inside that building really, really care and are trying to make it better.
Wow, that's really cool to hear about. So as we begin to wrap this up, I want to ask you, if you could switch places with anyone, this could be an athlete, a coach, just some person, who would it be?
Does it have to be a person?
No.
Okay,
because
I definitely want to pick my Chihuahua. No, there's no question.
What's your Chihuahua's name?
Her name is Brooklyn.
That's a great name.
Yeah, her name is Brooklyn. There's no question that if I could switch my life with any persons on this planet, it would be this dog. She is, for sure, the most spoiled thing on the planet. She lives her best life each and every day. And yeah, no, for sure, I'd switch with Brooklyn in a second.
That is amazing. Well, thank you, Deena, for coming on and talking to me. I had a really great time.
Yeah, thank you so much. This has been really awesome. I really appreciate the opportunity. And good luck to you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
This is Brewin with the Bears, and thank you to Shelburne Falls for sponsoring this conversation.